The following program contains shocking assertions of truth. If you suffer from relativism, Randall may not be right for you. Check with your local guru.
Standing for truth in the four corners of America. Fighting for justice on the frontiers of the culture wars. And turning resistance into an art form. Randall Terry.
Welcome, friend, to part two of last year in the rearview mirror. Oh no, it's coming up on us fast. Hit the gas. Oh. Yeah, we're going to cover stuff that happened last year, and it's with us this year, and it'll be with us with a vengeance. Lord, give us strength to fight, to resist. That's why we call this the voice of resistance. I sometimes get so upset about the state of our country that I can't sleep at night. So I count in binary until I fall asleep. 1, 10, 11, 100, 101, and so on. What is it that you say, you blistering idiot? You can't count in binary? Just because you have 10 fingers, you think you're restricted to base 10? No wonder our country is going down the black hole. The black hole!
You're going to, first of all, equip them with the information they need to know about what they can say and what they cannot say in the church that would violate their 501c3 status with the IRS. In fact, we're going to have the IRS administrator there. We're going to have the Attorney General, Eric Holder, there. We're going to have the lawyers organization from around the country, the ACLU, all giving ministers guidance on what they can and cannot do.
Well, Benedict the 16th made history by being the first Roman pontiff, the first pope to resign while he's alive in over 600 years. And then history was made again when the College of Cardinals elected who is now Pope Francis, the first pope to ever come from the Western Hemisphere and the first Jesuit pope. Timed Man of the Year. And I think the jury is still out on him. I do. But he's causing a lot of waves. Still has not moved into the papal apartments. He knows that there is severe corruption inside of the Vatican, both economic and sexual, and he is trying to deal with it. So what we have to see is how it all plays out. I am not, unfortunately, I'm not hopeful. And I'm going to tell you why. The story behind the story. Number one, the Roman Catholic leadership, at least in America and in other Western European nations, but I'll focus on America, has utterly failed, with a few notable exceptions, has failed utterly to deal with renegade Catholics like Vice President Biden and House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, just to name two. People who go to Mass, their hands drenched with the blood of innocent babies who their policies have murdered. And then they hold out those hands to receive the body and blood of Christ. This is sacrilege. This, by any definition, whether you're Protestant or Catholic, you have to acknowledge this is sacrilege to allow people who are participating in murder to come to Holy Communion. And it's worse than that still. You've got people like Archbishop Dolan in New York who are chumming around with Obama. Would you invite Herod? Would you go to a dinner that honored Herod? Or would you laugh with Herod after he murdered the babies of Bethlehem as he sought to kill the Christ child? So I ask to these bishops, would you serve Herod communion? After he killed the babies? If he was coming with his hands stained with the blood of those innocent victims of Bethlehem, would you serve him communion? This is such a scandal. It boggles the mind. And yet it continues unabated in America. But it just got even worse. And that's why I'm so sad and grieved. And I'm trying to maintain hope, but it's hard. I'll give you a little bit of understanding of how the politics of the creation of bishops happens in the Roman Catholic Church. There's a group of bishops in an area that will submit 3 names to the papal nuncio in a country, who gives them to Rome and says these 3 priests might be, any one of them might be a good bishop. Then in Rome, there's a body of men called the Congregation of Bishops, who look at the list and make a recommendation to the Pope. Because ultimately, if my understanding is correct, it's the Pope who says, yes, this priest, we want to become a bishop. Well, you might have heard and remembered the name of Archbishop Burke, Raymond Burke. When he was in St. Louis, he forbid baby-killing politicians to take communion. He was the odd man out. Boy, did he cause controversy and strain with the American Catholic bishops. So he was then taken to Rome, made a cardinal, and put over, I can't remember what he does, please forgive me. But I got a great interview with him once when I went to Rome. I actually interviewed him and talked to him about this scandal. Well, he was on this congregation of bishops that gets to choose who is recommended to the Pope. We just learned, 2-3 weeks ago, that he was removed from that congregation of bishops. He can no longer give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And in his place, Cardinal Wuerl of Washington, D.C., the Archbishop of Washington, D.C., who is one of the most guilty bishops in America regarding this thing of serving communion to baby killers, because they're all right there. These baby-killing Democrat and Republican Catholics who, all over the country for that matter, but they're in Washington, D.C., and they're going to the various Catholic churches there, and they're receiving communion, and not a peep comes from Archbishop Wuerl's lips to tell them, this is wrong, you need to repent, don't present yourself for communion as long as this is going on. So, whether you're Protestant or Catholic, my simple encouragement to you is to tell the religious leaders of your denomination that if they know that someone promotes the murder of babies or the attack on marriage from the homosexual agenda, to forbid them from receiving communion. And I think that the Lord would be happy with that. Do it with a good attitude, but I think it would make the Lord happy. And it's a part of us standing up for our faith and for the innocent and for marriage. My wife and I, for 5 years, have been grinding our own wheat and baking our own bread from scratch. Within 2 hours, you can have fresh wheat in your hand and then piping hot bread come out of the oven. The most nutritious and delicious bread you will ever have. And we do it for under $1 a loaf. Call Paulas Bread and find out about this grain mill and the mixer and how it can save you money and change your life.
Again, I disagree with you, because when something is illegal, you can go to jail for doing it. It's illegal to kill, it's illegal to rape, it's illegal to steal. Being in a same-sex relationship is not illegal. So I think it's not as a matter of semantics. I actually think you're just using the wrong terminology.
No, you're using the wrong terminology. You're saying being in a same-sex relationship is not illegal. No, it's not. But being married in certain states is illegal.
Remember, friend, God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. And certainly not Madam and Eve. I want to lighten it up. You've heard the expression, hate the sin, love the sinner. It's a decent bumper sticker, and it used to kind of annoy me, but I'm warming to it because we have come to this place where to be politically correct and to appear merciful or loving or tolerant, that many of our religious leaders in our congregations as well have simply caved in regarding marriage. Now, the evangelical world has spearheaded much of the resistance to the so-called homosexual marriage movement. But the resistance is weakening, and that poor, lost group of people, God loved them, I love them, they are made in the image of God, Jesus died for them, and that's the sin that they're struggling with, okay? We all struggle with sin, we are all sinners, right? But that poor, lost group of people have made incredible strides. The Supreme Court struck down the Defense of Marriage Act. I think about a half a dozen states now, mostly through their courts, have said that to forbid two people of the same gender to be married is unconstitutional. This is absurd on its face. It's absurd on its face. And if you have to try and reason with people whose intellect is so sullied by perverse ethics, well, there's no reasoning with them. But the story behind the story, the bigger story, is that multiculturalism, pluralism, tolerance, relevance, where you have, there's no such thing as right and wrong, humanism, that these philosophies have so worn down the leaders of our denominations, the professors in our seminaries, and therefore our pastors, that we have lost our ability, many of our congregations, I should say, not all of them, have lost the ability to simply resist this evil and to condemn it as evil. Publicly, politely, but vigorously. With compassion, yes. You can say to somebody who's a drug addict, I'm so sorry. This is so tragic. But you don't change the rules and say, no, cocaine addiction is great, man. I support you in that lifestyle choice. I'm standing with you. And if it makes you happy, I will stand with you. You just don't do that. And that's what's at stake here. It's not that people are committing a sin, and that's sad because it's part of our human nature. It's that we're changing the rules and saying, it's not sin. It's normal. We're going to normalize it. We're going to force our little kids to accept it. We're going to teach it in our elementary schools and in our middle schools. And ultimately, it's going to come down to what maybe they have up in Canada, some people fear, that there'll be hate speech laws. And that's what's really funny about the Duck Dynasty people. Everyone says, we want tolerance. A&E said, we want tolerance for the LBGT or whatever it is, the BLT, I don't know, it's not a sandwich, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender movement. They cry out for tolerance, but when someone says, no, I disagree with that, then they drop the hammer and they say, we won't be tolerant of you. The masters of tolerance are the tyrants of intolerance. So the question we must face is, will we fear God more or man more? Will we love God more? Or will we have a false love and a false charity that we show to people that are trapped in a behavior that may cost them their eternal soul? I mean, that's scary stuff, people. So my encouragement to you as we go into this new year, don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed. Stand with our Lord Jesus. Stand with God. Stand with the Scriptures. Stand with the historic Christian religion. And stand with Duck Dynasty in defense of marriage. Do you want to have knowledge, wisdom, discernment? If so, you have to read good books on theology, history, books that look at the lives of great men and women. So to help you to become a more effective Christian, a better witness for truth, somebody who can engage in productive conversation that exhorts and edifies those that you speak with, we're going to do something crazy. We're offering you these 7 books for a gift of any size. You just pay for the shipping and handling, and then give whatever gift that you can, and we will send them to you. But just to make it a little bit more crazy, I will send you a second copy of my 3 books autographed. You can give them as a gift to your pastor or to a family member and help extend truth and justice in the world. This is while supplies last.
Sharia does not allow freedom of religion. It discriminates against women, against non-Muslims. There is no equal rights under Sharia. A Muslim head of state can come to power through seizure of power, not through election.
It's now abundantly clear that the Arab Spring produced a bouquet of weeds, and that we've gone from spring into an ice tundra. There never was an Arab Spring. It was all a facade. It was always the Muslim Brotherhood wanting to accomplish its agenda of implementing Sharia law in various Islamic nations and reuniting the Ummah, the one people, restoring the caliphate, the successor to Muhammad. All right, so we've got Egypt, where Morsi was thrown out, and now the Muslim Brotherhood has been declared a terrorist organization again. This has happened in Egypt since the early 1920s. That's where the Muslim Brotherhood was born, was Egypt. And they've had an on-again, off-again, mostly off-again relationship with the Egyptian government since its inception. Because from the beginning, they were terrorists and assassins, and they were trying to bring down Islamic governments in order to put up, or I mean, I shouldn't say Islamic governments, the governments in power in Islamic states in order to put in a government that really was founded on Sharia law. Well, now what we're seeing, oh my goodness, is that Sharia law is bad and it's oppressive and it paves the way for Christians to be raped and murdered and brutalized and imprisoned. Go over to Syria, and obviously Assad is a dirtbag, but you've got John McCain here in America wanting to arm the Free Syrian Army, so-called, which is comprised largely of Al-Qaeda type or Al-Qaeda member terrorists, as well as jihadists who completely agree with Al-Qaeda's agenda. They just haven't had a chance to link arms with them until now. And John McCain and other people in our government want to arm these rebels who are involved in murder, cannibalism, okay? They're murdering Christians in Syria and then literally committing cannibalism, right? So the story behind the story is that our government is being led, and I want to, can I say the word by idiots, or is that unkind? I don't, all right, I'll try and think of another word. I'll get back to you on that. But our government is being led, both the Obama administration and other members in the intelligence community and foreign affairs committees, they haven't got a clue. They don't understand Islam. They don't know history. They don't read the Quran. They don't read the Hadith and the Sunnah. They don't know what they're dealing with. Namely, and what we've seen in Pakistan and in Afghanistan and in Iran and in Iraq and in Egypt and in Saudi Arabia and in Syria, what we've seen is that Islam itself, at its core, is a religion of violence that will run roughshod over the human rights that are inherent to the Judeo-Christian framework of law and of culture. No free speech, no ability to elect your representatives, the abasement of women, the persecution of people who do not go with their Shiite views or with their Sunni views of Islam. Egypt, Syria, these other nations that I mentioned are a living, breathing, hellacious proof that Islam is a threat to human dignity, to human liberty, and to the church itself. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, take a vacation to Turkey. Walk in the ruins of the churches that were built in the towns that are referred to in the book of Revelation. You can actually go to Ephesus and see where Paul preached. And you can see churches in total ruin. The literal area that held the baby Christ, the nascent church, now is overrun by Islam. That blueprint is what they want for the whole world. That is why we have to know what we're dealing with. We have to preach to them to convert to Christ, but we have to resist the spread of Islam until it is no longer the curse of the sword of Sharia law in the earth. Do you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes, and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today. Without doubt, one of the biggest stories, not just of the last year, but of the last decade or 2 decades, is the fact that our government is spying on all of us. We have Edward Snowden to thank for the data that he brought forth when he became a whistleblower. He recently filmed a Christmas greeting, and we're going to play some of it for you, just to give you food for thought.
Hi, and Merry Christmas. I'm honored to have a chance to speak with you and your family this year. Recently, we learned that our governments, working in concert, have created a system of worldwide mass surveillance, watching everything we do. Great Britain's George Orwell warned us of the danger of this kind of information. The types of collection in the book, microphones and video cameras, TVs that watch us, are nothing compared to what we have available today. We have sensors in our pockets that track us everywhere we go. Think about what this means for the privacy of the average person. A child born today will grow up with no conception of privacy at all. They'll never know what it means to have a private moment to themselves, an unrecorded, unanalyzed thought. And that's a problem, because privacy matters. Privacy is what allows us to determine who we are and who we want to be. The conversation occurring today will determine the amount of trust we can place both in the technology that surrounds us and the government that regulates it. Together, we can find a better balance, end mass surveillance, and remind the government that if it really wants to know how we feel, asking is always cheaper than spying. For everyone out there listening, thank you and Merry Christmas.
I believe with all my heart that the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Amendments to our Constitution are being trashed. And we have to at least begin the discussion. Is our government becoming illegitimate? Are we dealing with a rogue, or even, dare I say, a criminal government? In other words, a government led by people in both parties who have signed off to this trampling of our constitutional rights about search and seizure, and about search warrants, and about quartering soldiers in our home, which they're doing by spying on us. Have the leaders of our government from both parties become tyrannical? Are they operating outside of the law? Is this, in fact, a criminal government? The answer might take us a while to discuss and debate, but what we know we must do is resist them and demand that this massive spying be stopped.